Hello, yeah, this is recording. Good. This is Aaron Klein again. Welcome back. Always nice to have people come watch these. Yeah, if you can't tell, this I don't really expect to. If this channel grows, that'd be amazing. But we're not there yet. I'm just trying to consistently punch out some information. So I'll just give a tiny channel update and get into today's topic. And it's based on channel update. You'll understand. So I realized somewhere along the way that I have a unique writing style, and it's a writing style that I like. So, and on top of that, I've come to understand it's one of my biggest strengths that I can write. It's to my understanding that a lot of people just aren't skilled at writing. They're not authors. So apparently it's supposed to be rare or whatever that people can write. I'm watching a fire, sorry. Same old like it was when I started this channel. So I've decided that part of my channel from now on will be giving I'm going to say writing help. I'll give you some small what would I call them? Not lectures, but I'll say small case studies of certain things you can write about. I might mention some of my books I'm not publishing anymore. I have no intention to. And of course, at that rate, it'd be great if you didn't publish it because it was my ideas in the first place, but at the same time, I'm never publishing them because there's too many loopholes. Well, there's too many holes to get into. But yeah, that's just I'm gonna start including that stuff into my channel. But it does actually work with kind of where the channel is going. I've been giving you kind of Western sociology for the past, I don't know how many videos, 10 or so. So instead, I think I'll be showing some application of where that gets to be somewhat important, and why it's a good idea. Why it's a good idea to and why it's a good idea to understand how societies function. Why it's a good idea to understand some psychology. If you ever decide you want to start writing novels, this is a good place to start. You want to be able to have a functioning society. A good story will follow a narrative. A great story will follow the characters, and the characters will tell it. That's really my motto. The best stories are told by the characters when the author just lets them go have fun and live in this world. So what all that entails, I'll include two topics real quick because the first one is 5 minutes, and that would only bring the video to 8 minutes. And I'm used to doing longer videos anyways. So the first topic is what all goes into a really good story. It doesn't have to be, you can write short stories that are great anyways, that are 5 pages long. I call that short. Or I think you can get away with 30 pages, and some people call that a novella because a tiny book. I usually do novels, so that's where I'm going to come from the idea of, but you can get away with novellas and short stories from this. You can even do a short story that's 2 pages. But anyways, so to start with, if you are first of all, you have to understand how much you need for each writing style. If you're doing a novel, how much information you need. A novella, a short story, I'm gonna call some novels, I'll call them mega novels. These would be novels that are more than 400 plus pages. No, I'll say 300 plus pages. That's a very good place to start. If your book is more than 300 pages, you're going to need a very in-depth world to include into that book to justify the 300 pages. So I'll just start from the top because I'm used to writing the mega novel stuff because when I think I'll just go about my thought process when I'm writing to give you like the mega novel idea. I don't know what someone's revving an engine somewhere, a loud one. It's annoying. Sorry. So what all should you include in a mega novel? To start with, you should have a very well-built world. Now that doesn't mean you have to include every detail of that world, but you need to know where you're starting, and you need to know the areas around it that you're going to visit within your mega novel. If you're only this can be brought down to just like if your novel's built around a house or a small community, and you might stretch out a little bit outside the community. So like, for example, in the Hunger Games, the novel started out at a house in District 12, and that house was on the edge, and Katniss went outside of District 12 to hunt, and it gave you some descriptions of what each was like. It gave you a description of how the environments of coal mining were, because that's what the district brought in. Then it gave you some details, then it gave you a lot of details about the capital and how everyone was living. Yeah, that's a good example. Her books never hit, I think one or two maybe hit above 300 pages. But like, we're not talking like Riordan long or there are mega novels out there. And the reason why they work is because they have a very fully built world. Now, I will say this, it needs to be complete. I have criticisms about books who have incomplete worlds that just drop people in, and you can tell the world isn't quite built yet by the time the first book comes around. That is unfair to the readers, and it is unfair to you. If you don't know where you're going, if you don't know what your characters are being dropped into, how are you supposed to react? Your world feels very weak. It feels untethered to the rest of the world. So like, the town you're in does not feel tethered to where you were just at, and that's not healthy. It creates the distance seems trivial because there's no connectivity. So that's one of the issues you start having to worry about if the author isn't very good at world building. The plus side is if you're good at world building, that can be taken elsewhere. Like, I have 2 D&D campaigns I've been writing for a while. Oh, come on. The wind is blowing the smoke in my direction. Yeah. Okay, there. That might change. Will it? It's never done this. I think it's just because of the shifting winds. Darn it. Okay, yeah, there we go. Sorry about that. If you're good at world building, you can enjoy doing other things. D&D is great. You can write games. Like, you can write plots for games. Realistically, it also really helps. Like, it helps in multiple professions. If you are a good world builder, it also means that you can, just in general, it's good if you're driving long distances, because it means you can recognize the path you need to go to get to a certain place. And you will be able to know some of the nuances too. There's just a lot. I know it's a specialty area, but you can use certain tools from it elsewhere. The next step you're gonna have to do is create the culture within that world. Oh, this is going on much longer. Never mind. I'll do 2 separate videos, and that's fine. The second thing you need to do is create the culture within that world. If your world is big enough that you need multiple cultures because you have multiple countries, then you need to account for that too. I literally, in the book I'm writing, have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes, I have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'll say I'll say 7 countries, but one's in a civil war, so it's almost like 2. And each of those have their own culture within them. They have their own religions, sort of. They actually, the religions overlap because the people are allowed to somewhat freely move between the countries. So there's a lot of overlap, but you have to be able to create religions and stuff like that within each country. Now, if just the entire continent is one country, that solves a little bit, but you have to be able to create all the parts of the society, from low class, middle class, elites. You have to understand the caste system. You have to understand, if you're including magic, you have to understand how that plays a role in it. You have to understand how the religion plays a role. If you're writing an atheistic book, okay, but you also have to understand how that plays into it. And by the way, it does not look like our society does. Don't do that. I will criticize the living daylights out of you. We live in a Judeo-Christian legal system because our society, when it started, was Christian. So we live in a pseudo-Judeo-Christian society. So do not dare use our society as a basis for an atheistic society. If you want to start looking someplace, look at how lions, hear me out, look at how lions, if a lion camp could somehow integrate multiple males and expand, that is a great place to look, because just the data shows that if we don't have a moral system backing us up somehow, if you say a religion there's something else to it that helped create it other than humans, and then you have to understand that atheistic society would have more of a biological functioning society within it. So you're going to have to consider polygamy. You're going to have to consider predatory human beings that are psychopaths and narcissists. And even then, you also have to understand the feminine version of that, which would be what is it called? I know this stuff clearly. Borderline personality disorder. You're gonna have to understand the cluster B area, because they have maladaptive social constructs which will thrive in an atheistic society. In fact, you might see nothing but that. So that's extremely important. You have to understand you have to understand the religion in the society. You have to understand if you have a lack of religion, you have to understand how the people function within it. So furthermore, then you have to work on your characters. This is the hardest part. I mean, it's not really, because you just planned out the society they were born in and raised in, and you understand where they are in connection to the pseudo cultures. Like, each town has its own little culture. So you understand the culture that town has, the culture that the towns around it has. You understand, is there a massive distance with a bunch of farmers? Is it a shorter distance? So that way trading is easier. You're going to have to start understanding the smaller cultures within, and then you start creating your characters. What are they, guy or girl? Do they look different? Are they built muscularly? What's their personality like? Their personality is going to tie back a bit to their society. Just a heads up. Culture does influence personality, but also genetics does. So, for example, this is just very clear by now. We have a lot of research that supports it. Psychopathy, it has genetic links to it, just straight up. And even amongst relatively healthy human beings that have those traits, you can tell that there is some genetics to it. So like if someone's a serial killer because they're a psychopath, their siblings probably have some similar traits, not even necessarily because their parents didn't raise them the best they could. Some of it is they're just born with it. The researchers out there, do not be mad at me. There's reason to believe that there's reason to believe extroversion, like all the personality traits, there's reason to believe they have genetic ties along with nurture ties, like how you're raised based on society and on your parents. You have to be able to at least try your best to tie those in whenever you're creating your character. And then obviously, like if you give them some sort of strange name, it had better be either culturally appropriate or there had better be a reason. And if your reason is that they are somewhat of an outcast, be it on accident because their parents just wanted to create a unique name for them, make sure that's clear. And don't give them some BS Mary Sue about it being cool to have that unique name. Be honest, is this name acceptable in the society? And then once you get like where your characters are, then you're going to have to start actually writing now. Shocker, right? This entire time I've been telling you you're going to have to build this stuff up, and now I'm telling you to actually start putting words on the page. You're going to have to decide how you want to open up your book, your super novel. You're going to have to just pick a way to do that. And you can't use some BS thing like you got a call and you met up at a bar or something like that. I mean, you can, but like it had better be unique in how you do it. So like, for example, a lot of times I end up when I end up writing, a lot of times I end up in a flash of gaining consciousness, whether it be they wake up out of sleep, whether they got done with a task and they've decided to move on to the next one, whether it be whenever they're changing from something that feels a little bit droning to something where they're now conscious, like fully conscious. That's always a good place to start. So like just like you could have something like the sun is piercing through their eyelids or something like that, and they decide it's now time to get up because clearly they're conscious but they haven't opened their eyes yet or something like that. That's somewhat common. You have to use your own wording there. I have my own wording, but anyways, and then once you get to there, start introducing once the character is now, you just planted them in the world, start introducing them to it. So start introducing them to other characters, start introducing them to their house or their environment, start introducing a little bit of their backstory, start introducing them to their personality, start expressing that personality as they interact with the world. You're just going to have to whenever you start writing, you have to get some way to start familiarizing the character, especially if it's first person. You're going to have to start familiarizing the reader into that character and that character into the world. That's fun. The first chapter or two should be about that, and it's supposed to sort of drag the story along, but it's more supposed to also drag the reader along into the character's shoes. So that way it feels like they're walking alongside and they just kind of merge, and it draws the reader in. That's why for me personally, I always feel more inclined to read books when it's a first person viewpoint, like when you're reading, it is the main character or a character. It doesn't even have to be the main character specifically that is telling the story through their eyes. Now that's a fun one to write about. I mean, it gets boring after a while, so you have to keep some of those books kind of short. But you could have the viewpoint be third person, but still write as a first person character in the story. That's always interesting. Some people have gotten away with doing that. I think that'd be interesting for me to try one day, but I'm sticking with what I know is tried and true. There's some differences between having to write first versus third person. First person, you have a lot more access to senses and thought processes. Third person, it's really good if you want to have like super intense fights, because you can't describe those as cool in first person. It's a different sort of cool. But you can't be as flashy, but it gets more into, like, you get into different... This is why I like first person most. Even though you can't get as flashy, you get into thought processes, you get into motion, you get into how the person goes from one step to the next, or how they swoop through 2 or 3 at the same time and implement the fourth. You can get into that kind of stuff when you're in first person. So there are authors out there that write in third person, and it's great. This is what I'm used to. If you know how to write in third person, do that. If you know to write first person, do that. Riordan does a great... He has a way of using multiple characters, like 7. He can get up to like 7 or 8 characters in a book, and it feels almost natural. My issue with his writing is, first of all, it's built more for kids, for younger audiences, which is fine. The bigger issue is, for me, is that a lot of it feels disconnected and jarring. So that's like... But that's just for me. If you like that sort of writing, cool. But for me, it's disconnected because you're not even in the first person. You're in the third person. And like, the characters don't seem in depth. They just, for me, when I read his writing, the characters seem to be tools to guide the plot. And that's not how good writing works. Good writing is the characters guide the plot. So sometimes you could even end up changing the way your book ends because the characters are built in a certain way, and that might not be fun, but then you have to, like, you might not know where the book's going, but that's fine because your characters do know. That's the plus side. If you have really well built characters, they will write the plot for you. And usually, like, if you already built the world really well, your end game is built somewhere within the society, whatever that is. So usually the characters can get there just fine. And like, this is something that you just have to struggle with when you start writing. You need to let your characters take the lead, or the book starts to feel like it's propaganda, and the characters are being used as tools, and that's not fun. The characters can use tools, but they shouldn't be tools. Let's see. Yeah, it was hard for me when I first started writing, because I had plans for where my characters were going, but I built my characters better than my plans. So I ended up ditching the first like 2 books I was writing, because they just weren't working out. The characters were leading me elsewhere, or the characters felt like tools. Either way, it wasn't fun. Let's see, anything else? Yes, you need to make sure that you have a climax for the book, clearly, because sometimes the characters won't go there normally. You need to make sure that while you're still doing this, that you can follow the rules of story writing, where there's a huge climax. Now, to be fair, a lot of times you can leech that in at the beginning. You can implant a parasite at the beginning of, sorry, we have to hit a climax, here you go. And it'll just grow, and then eventually, it's like, there have been like children's books that even describe this process. Basically, you create a little problem that the character doesn't really want to address at the beginning, and then as the character keeps ignoring it, it grows and grows. This happens all the time in life. You'll see people just not pay bills, and then their car gets repossessed. And now I have a 2009 Toyota Camry. That kind of thing, that is a great way to implement a peak in a story. You plant a little you plant this little seed, this little weed, and it's just going to grow and grow, and then at some point the character has to deal with it. This is a really good storytelling hook. You put something off in the side, and like the character eventually has to handle it. So I'll just give you an example. This is from a book I tossed. So yeah, feel free to, like this time I'll say feel free to use this. And you'll see why I tossed the book. Like, I'll just tell you right now. It's because it revolves around the world of Sword Art Online. So like, no. I am not going to go there. I'm not going to try to get copyrights for that. But anyways, the main character was from the original Sword Art Online. He got trapped in Japan because he went to visit his father for his birthday, and he was given the Sword Art Online game. So if you know what the story's about, like if you know the ending of the story, enjoy. But like the basic idea was that they got nerve gear, and then the nerve gear was basically, I think Elon Musk is doing something with Neuralink, which is that's scary, so I'm not getting that for obvious reasons. Anyone who's watched Sword Art Online, but basically they got put into the video game. It was like they felt pain, they felt hunger, they felt everything. But it was a level system game, so it was a JRPG, so they could just level grind up whatever they needed to. But the issue became that they got trapped in there. They couldn't be let out because the game didn't have a logout function. And then on top of that, they were forced to play the game, and said if they died in the game, they died in real life. So that was the hook for Sword Art Online, the original anime. So like I kind of drew that back in, and like literally page 2 I mentioned that a similar game is coming out in the US, because like the seed was released obviously, but a similar game was coming out in the US that was only compatible with the old nerve gear. So the main character knew he probably shouldn't be buying this, but at the same time he was a video game addict at the time. So that decision was coming up. So for like the first 60% of the book, it's sort of a love story. He meets a gamer girl, and she's extremely smart. She's working on her master's at the time, and she's like 16. She's working on her master's in mathematics. So yeah, they meet and are dating, and then after about the 60% mark, they both agree, yes, we're gonna go buy the game and play and meet up online. And so like this is the big monster now that he has to encounter, but he doesn't necessarily have to. The issue becomes, it's a dragon. I'm just using some Jordan Peterson inferences here. This is a dragon, but he doesn't actually have to fight it. It's not an issue for him until the game comes out. He goes over to her house because there's some family issues, and he talked to her, and he comforted her somewhat, and then she says, well, they decide they're going to meet on the game anyways, instead of waiting for the rest of the day or whatever. And she goes in, he goes back to his house, and he comes in the house, and it's already been announced, like the news is it's already breaking news that the game is just like a Sword Art Online. So now he decides to go fight this dragon again that he survived the first time barely. So now he has to fight it again to go get his girlfriend out. You see, that's how you can drive plot. You implant a little doubt, a little problem, and then it just keeps growing until it's massive and consuming, and you have to fight it or else it will consume you. That's always nice. And like that's also another reason why it's good to have character-driven storylines, because then you can create tailored little problems for these characters to have to either handle fast or handle eventually when they're bigger. And I like it. Personally, I like doing this when the character has room to grow. Like, they have to grow before they can start fighting this tiny problem. But then by the time it gets big enough, by the time they are done growing, the problem is big enough that it is now even harder for them to fight. So, like, that's always really cool to do. The character has to grow so they can't actually handle it at the time. An example of this would be, I don't know any examples right off of literature, because I haven't read as much recently, but I do my own writing, so I kind of have an excuse. But an example of this, like, I sort of gave you an example, but no, he couldn't handle it because he was living in the real world. A real example would be, let's say some sort of kid is putting up with some corrupt guard in his town who's accepting bribes and whatnot. So he clearly can't handle this at the time. He has to grow to handle this. So he starts training to become a soldier. And better yet, he starts training to become a politician. He starts reading more. He starts learning how to speak properly, because he wants to be able to fix the system from the inside. And he sees this guard as just the start of a huge issue. And then by the time he's an adult and he's able to enter politics, this guard is now the head of is now way higher in the military, like a general. So in order to have to get this guard out, he had to grow, but the guard kept growing with him, and it got bigger and bigger than he could handle. So, and you also have to find a way to incorporate the character growing in all of this, and how the guard may have grown too. So that's actually a really cool way to start. Like, that one I'm giving out for free. You can use that in whatever book. I'm not using it, just because, like, I have different things I want to write about. But that's one good way to draw the reader to a big threat that the person has to take care of, because they got attached to the person as they were growing, but then they realized, oh, this person was also growing too. Now they're all attached to this villain-esque character. Usually corrupted people are good villain characters. So yeah, that's me giving you some way to write the story to get it to grow. So that way you eventually have a complete book. And like, you're gonna have to find your own way to end a book. If it's a one-shot book, cool. That's usually a bit easier than figuring out where to cut your story between books. For me, like, I'm really good at figuring out when to tie something up. I've taught myself how to tie things up till the next time. Where's a good stopping point till the next chapter of the book, or where's the next stopping point till the next book comes out? You're gonna have to learn some of this on your own. My suggestion is, if you want to learn world building, you can use some of my videos in the past to see where our problems are in the Western world, and you can start to pick apart pieces from the Western world, yes, and use those to world build. But you also want to include parts from your own society, or if you're actually writing something in the Western world, go balls deep. I think I have a very conclusive, not very conclusive, very inclusive collection of problems in our society. Now, I will say this: some of them sound like crackpot ideas, or some of them sound psychopathic ideas that I could be having mental issues. The issue is, our world is also having mental issues, so you are gonna have to take me at face value on a lot of stuff. I got into human mating issues in some earlier videos. I wouldn't necessarily suggest you use those. I mean, you can. They hold true, realistically, the issue is you don't want to sound like a crackpot. You don't want to sound like some love guru or whatever. You probably don't necessarily want to use that stuff. Because that comes down to, that comes from a fairly bad source to get it from. Yes, the information is true, but the source giving it out has very nefarious intentions, and a lot of them are, all of them are clearly misogynistic. That's the issue. And the idea, their conclusions are misogynistic too. So yeah, be careful of what you pull from me, what you pull from other people. This is also where I say, hopefully you have some critical reading skills to start with. And I also say, please do research on personality traits, not types. So the Myers-Briggs personality types, don't use that kind of test to build your character. Yes, they help a little bit, but someone could take that the first time and then in 2 years take it again and completely change. For example, I used to be an ESTJ, that was me exploring the world, taking in information. Now I'm an INTJ because I have all those skills that I pulled from 6 years ago, and I've accumulated a lot of skills since then, and I just do that stuff naturally. But now my brain thinks more of meta world construction kind of stuff. I look at huge systems and I see what's working, what's not working, why. I ask if there's something to, if there's a bigger reason why within it. I start asking those questions, and usually I look for research later for evidence of the bigger problems within the world. Wow, that turned into a 37-minute video. Wow. So I hope you guys find some good information here. You're not gonna, if you're in high school, you're not getting this information. There's no way you're getting this information in high school. I didn't get it, and I had decent English teachers. You aren't getting it. I never even went farther. I'm just going to give a quick rundown of how you cut down information to get down to smaller books. So if you want to write a normal novel, somewhere between 100 and 280 or so pages, you need to cut back on the world building and on the characters. That sucks, but don't cut back too much on the characters, cut back on the world building. You need to be able to disassociate. You need to either condense it down to one place. You need to condense it down to one place where the world is, you need to condense the world, or you need to have smaller fractioned dissociative parts of the world. So if you see mega novels using this strategy, the writer isn't good enough to be writing the bigger novels, and I'm sorry to say that. I think Rick Riordan got close. I still like his work for pleasure sometimes. Let's see. I think Suzanne Novel, the writer of the Hunger Games, could have written 400-page books and fleshed them out a little bit better. She would have gotten away with it just fine. Her world building was spot on. The issue is she built weaker characters for some of the characters, and she condensed her character list. So when the movies came out, you were able to see some of the characters done better than what she had written. Namely, what's his name? The mentor, I forget his name. The mentor, it was built on within the movie, his character, and that was even better. The book just had him as a drunk. In the movie, they built on his character, and he was this snarky, glib, narcissistic drunk, and that was really funny too. he had a great personality. I mean, I wouldn't even say narcissistic. I'd just say he was glib, and it was funny. He was only serious when he needed to be, and the character play was genius. If you need to cut back even farther, I will say, like, down to a short story, you need to focus on one character and just enough world that it's right around them, and all the other people need to be objects to push the story along. And yes, you can cut back on the character if you need to. So I wrote a 12 page short story. It's considered short story. That it was. I'm not giving it out because it was for school, so I'd like to keep that information for myself. But I had one character. He was out at sea rescuing a friend, and the friend ended up dying, and he had to come back to shore. And he brought the friend's ship, like the friend and his crew, back with him in caskets. So the story was sad, but the point is, you still need to have characters, and the characters need to drive the plot. Let's see. Novella is supposed to be somewhere between there. You need to have a little bit of world in there, or you need to have a little bit of character in the world and plot. You know what I mean. I forgot something, but I'll tell you now. This is like your bonus of the day whenever I start doing these. This is where I'm going to say, this is how I would approach this. You need to approach this for yourself. If you are ever writing your own religion, and you ever decide you need to write a God figure, no, never mind. I'll cover this in the next video, but it's because it works better in the next video. My next video is going to be on Mary Sue's. So what I was about to start talking about is how you write God characters, and it gets really it's better to build on top of Mary Sue's than it is to try to incorporate them as it's better to learn how to do that within the context of writing Mary Sue's and build on top of Mary Sue's. So yeah, thank you for your time. If you like the content, please share it. Please show it to other people. This is the fun part for me, where I start showing you guys how characters work, how world building works. This is the fun part for me, because I've been doing a lot of world building for you guys the past however many videos. So you need to, that's just straight up, when you start talking sociology, psychology, philosophy, you get into world building areas. So the best psychologists are writers first, because you have to be able to understand a plot and patterns in order to be a good psychologist, and you have to be able to express those in order to be a good writer. So yeah, I'll get into Mary Sue's in the next video. So thank you guys. Please feel free to comment. If you have any constructive criticism, please feel free to drop it in. Yeah, this is the fun part, guys. This is stuff I like talking about. I started writing back in high school, and it's just grown. It's built upon itself, and that's good, and that's fun. So thank you for your time, and goodbye.